with us as we continue. If you know the song, sing along. If you don't, then just close your eyes and act like you know the song. It's okay. Father God, you sent your Son. Yes, you did. Jesus Christ, the only trying to work on turning the captions off because it was saying stuff that I was not saying, but it'll be okay. It'll be alright. Welcome to Threefold live stream. Happy Tuesday. It's a Tuesday.
Merry Christmas.
Merry Tuesday. We are so glad that you're here. I apologize for the captions. I mean, if Christian can figure out how to turn them off, I'm not really sure how to turn them off. I've done it before, can't figure it out now, but we'll just have to deal with it. But thank you so much for joining our live stream. It is such a blessing to be able to be...
I love our background.
It is such a blessing to be able to be here tonight.
You didn't use the right one, though.
I couldn't find it. Be able to worship with you guys. And yeah, Christian, if you want to go and try and figure out how to turn captions off, not really sure as I start talking, because yeah, I was saying some weird stuff on the captions that I was not saying, and I kind of don't want it to continue, but if we can't change it, it's okay. We'll just have to figure it out later. Anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and tonight we are going to be talking about trusting the process. But before we get started, as always, we love you so much. We have a website, the3fold.online. If you have not checked it out yet, you should totally check it out, because we have, oh, he's leaving. We have merch there, we have all of our music there, we have our schedule there, everything's there. The3fold.online, you can find everything there. You can also message us on...
Are we using Restream?
Yes.
It could be on
I've tried to turn it off on Restream, couldn't figure it out. I mean, if you want to take my phone, right click and try. I looked through the settings, but I couldn't find it. If not, it's okay. But all of our information is there, so if you want to go check it out, again, the3fold.online, you can look at our merch, you can look at literally everything. Also, I'm wearing a Threefold shirt right now. It's super comfortable. Christian, can you agree? Our merch is like super comfy, and I love our merch so much. But yeah, tonight we are going to be talking about trusting the process. And if you do not follow our church page, which is God's House of Worship, I actually spoke on Sunday morning about the idea that God is not ignoring you. He is preparing you. And so in the process comes preparation, and it's it's essential to our spiritual walks and everything having to do with our journey and with becoming who we're supposed to be through Christ. And so it'll be okay. It's fine.
Oh, you got it.
It'll be alright. If it says something weird, just assume that the caption was not right, because auto caption was spazzing out earlier. It was saying some weird stuff, so I apologize. But first, I want to read Proverbs 3:5-6. And it says, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths." And so that's amazing, because it literally says, trust in the Lord with all of your heart and lean not on your own understanding, which is hard. It's never easy to trust anything else other than our own understanding, because it's all that we know, right? But in our spiritual walk, we have to trust God more than we trust what our eyes see, what our physical nature sees, what our physical bodies feel. Any of that, we have to trust God more. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. So if you're acknowledging him in absolutely everything, he will direct your paths in every step that you take, which is beautiful. So Christian, I'm going to ask you this time, what does it mean to prepare someone for something? Or if you're preparing for something, or someone is preparing you for something, or you're preparing someone for something, what does it mean? Like, what does preparing mean to you? And comment in the chat as well, what does preparing mean to you?
I'll pull up the chat too. To me, you mean like preparing as in like...
Preparing for something.
How, like I prepare for something.
What does it
or
mean?
Or like, what does it mean to prepare someone? Like, what's the reason? Is that kind of what you mean? So to me, to be prepared or to prepare someone, I think it's a thing of...
Oh, we got some fire emojis. Thank you so much. We love the fire emojis in the chat. Okay, go ahead.
I think it's a thing of... Well, for one, you could say, if you were trying to help someone prepare for something, it's because you care for them and you care about how they perform or how they do in something. And when that comes to God preparing us for things, he doesn't want us to fail when it comes to...
we could literally end it right here. We could literally end it right here. Not gonna lie to you.
Is that the one you were looking for?
No, well, I mean, yes. It's not that I was just looking for an answer, but that was good. That was good. We could literally just turn the live off right now and just end it all. Because that was good. So you say that God prepares us because he cares about us and he doesn't want us to fail.
That's how I would look at it, because if I was helping someone prepare, it's not going to be, like, let's be honest, it's not going to be somebody I don't like. I'm not going to sit here and...
You should.
I should.
But
generally speaking, it's because you care about someone that you're going to help them prepare for something coming up.
And see, that's interesting that you said that as well, because sometimes we get this idea that whenever we're being prepared for something, God's ignoring us again, because we get this idea that God's ignoring us if there's silence, right? Or if we just don't understand it. But sometimes in the silence is preparation. It's God saying, like, I'm working on things inside of you, and I know you don't exactly see it right now, but I'm still working on you. And so it's very interesting that you said that, because it's not that... I think you need to learn how to use that.
I think so too, bro.
Well, you got me all confused now, Christian.
My bad.
What was I saying? You're gonna have to remind me.
I have no idea.
No, it's very interesting that you said what you said. Okay, you're gonna have to stop, because that is very distracting.
I'm trying to go back and forth and like all the comments that are coming in, so...
It's interesting that you said that, because sometimes we get the idea that God's ignoring us, even though he's just preparing us. And it's because he loves us so much, because he wants to see us succeed, because he wants us to see us take the right path in every situation of our life. And so that was powerful. Again, we could literally just end it right there, just stop the live, and everything would be fine, but we're not going to. Hello to the people who are just joining in. If you love the background, also put a fire emoji, because it's pretty great. It's a really great background. So yeah, whenever you're preparing someone for something, it means that you care about them And that's why God prepares us for things, because he cares about us, right? So I'm going to read from Genesis 15, 1 through 8. Again, if you saw Sunday's message, I apologize, you're just going to have to hear most of it again, but it's good, and I needed it more than once, so we're going to talk about it again. Genesis 15, 1 through 8. After these things, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid. I am your shield, your exceedingly great reward." But Abram said, "Lord God, what will you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus?" Then Abram said, "Look, you have given me no offspring. Indeed, one born in my house is my heir." And behold, the word of the Lord came to him, saying, "This one shall not be your heir, but one who will come from your own body shall be your heir." Then he brought him outside and said, "Look now toward heaven and count the stars, if you are able to number them." And he said to him, "So shall your descendants be." And he believed in the Lord, and he accounted it to him for righteousness. Then he said to him, "I am the Lord who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give you this land to inherit it." And he said, "Lord God, how shall I know that I will inherit it?" And so we see Abram, we see God specifically telling him the promise that he's given him, because he's questioning God, and he's saying, well, how am I going to have these things? How am I going to have a child? Like, I can't have a child. And if you have not already heard, because maybe there's someone out there that has not read this story, but he was too old to have children. His wife was too old to have children. They couldn't have children. In the physical body, in everything that science said they couldn't. And so we see God giving Abram a promise. He said, "I am your shield, your reward shall be very great." And Abram immediately responds with, How am I going to do that? It's funny, because like sometimes I feel like we read this and we say, like, why would Abram have done that? But literally we do that every time. Well, not every time. I'm not going to say every time. But a lot of times whenever God gives us a promise about something or shows us something, we say, but how is it going to happen, God? Like, we question God's ability to do something that he's promised us that he's going to do. So in reality, we are just like Abram in this situation most of the time, even if we don't recognize it while we're reading it. It's important to recognize that we are, even if sometimes we feel like he was a little crazy for thinking that. Do you want to say something?
Just go on for a second. I'm looking for a verse.
He's searching.
I have it highlighted because I was looking at it the other day. I was preparing something for something we're doing at Revive, Bibb County, but it's...
Revive in Bibb County is March the 19th, 6 o'clock. Please be there. It's going to be super amazing. And we're really excited for it. So, yeah, you should definitely come. But sometimes we get the exact same idea in our heads that Abram had of, but how is this going to happen if I don't understand how it's going to happen, God? Like, if it doesn't make sense to me, then how is that going to happen? But as we read at the beginning, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Even though it didn't make sense to him, even though physically it was impossible, spiritually nothing was impossible for God to do. So sometimes, yeah, we get stuck in the but God, where we try to put God in a box and say, if I don't understand it, then you can't do it. But in reality, God can do anything. And if God made a promise to you, then he will fulfill that, whether you understand it or not. So even whenever I don't understand, God is a God that can make all things work together in my life for my good. So sometimes a promise may not seem good in our eyes, or maybe we had a different idea of what something was supposed to look like, or how quickly it was supposed to progress. But in reality, God will make it all work out for your good, even if it doesn't look good in the moment, even if it's not what you thought would happen. God will make all things work together for your good that is much greater than you could ever imagine. More than you ask, think, or imagine. It's in a song. So then God told him to go outside and look at the stars, and if he could number them, then that's how much of his offspring he would have. And I'm sure Abram was like, huh? Like, how am I going to have that many children when I can't even have one right now, right? But Abram trusted in God because he knew that God was a provider, right? Not to say that Abram was perfect, because if we go on, we will see that Abram was anything but perfect, just like we are anything but perfect. But through Christ, we are made new. And yeah, so why didn't God automatically give Abram these things? Why do you think? In the chat, why do you think that God didn't automatically give Abram the promise that he told him he was going to give, but why do you think he didn't automatically give it to him and say, here it is, this is what I just told you about, so I'm not going to make you wait for it, you're not going to go through a process, you're just going to have it? Why do you think?
Well, it's never like that.
Okay, but
it's always a thing of having to show your faith to him. I mean, he's not just going to give you things if you're not being faithful to what he asks you to do, and that's
just like Dad always says, if you're faithful in the small things, God knows you will be faithful in the big things. But if you're not faithful in the small things, then how do you think you're going to be faithful in the big things? Which, again, really, in reality, the things that Christian's saying, like, we could just end it right there. I don't even have to say another word whenever but go ahead.
Which verse is it again? 24. Mark 11:24. It says, I tell you, you can pray for anything, and if you believe that you've received it, it will be yours. And another translation I'd found said, if you have faith.
Thank you. Facts.
Thank you. I'm trying to like it, and it just was not happening. Okay, so another translation that I had found said, if you have faith, but it's really the same thing. But the main question I want to ask, so if you, so you can say that this is just having faith in what you're asking for, but I think this goes a lot deeper. Because, let's think about this logically. So you're over here praying to a God that something is going to happen, or like this is going to happen. But you believe that you're believing that he can do it, but you're not having the faith enough to go follow him. You're not having the trust to go follow him and do what he asks you to do. Like, faith is more than just having faith in what you're asking for. It has more to do with, where am I going with this?
Faith without works is dead. I mean...
But what I'm saying is, it has more to do with following where he wants you to go, more than anything else, because otherwise, how is a God that you don't even trust enough to follow going to give you something? How are you going to have the faith to believe that's going to happen without a shadow of a doubt when you can't even follow him? I mean, and that's something for all of us, because sometimes you go the wrong way, and it's just...
And we can even see that if we keep going. Abram ends up doing things his own way with his wife. He has relations with his wife's maidservant, and they technically fulfilled what they thought was a promise, but it wasn't God's promise. It was not God's will. And so sometimes, yeah, we can do things our own way, and we can say, oh, I had the faith and God did that. But in reality, if we can't have the faith to just keep walking through the process and say, God, even if it doesn't really make sense to me, that's okay, because I have enough faith to know that if I follow you, you're gonna make everything work together, and you're gonna pull through in every situation. And so if we don't have the faith to say, God, I'm going to keep following you even when it's hard, or even when I start having doubts, then how are we going to have the faith to receive something that he's giving us, or go through the process of receiving something? Is that what you're trying to say?
Basically.
Okay.
So so it's our option to receive the promise, but that comes through having faith.
Need another quad.
Because we don't have to receive the promise. The promise is always there, but we don't have to receive it. But it's our choice. And through being faithful to him and following where he wants us to go, doing what he wants us to do, and everything, then we can receive. Then we can receive our blessings and the promise. So
a thing that I pray a lot, typically after we get done worshiping, is thank you, God, for being faithful even when I'm not. And so that was a really good point, because sometimes even God's going to be faithful regardless. So if he makes a promise, that promise is going to remain faithful, because that is who God is. But just because we do not remain faithful does not mean that God is not faithful. There's never a moment when God is unfaithful. He is true, and everything that he says and does is the truth. He is the way, the truth, and the life.
I was literally reading a verse about unfaithfulness, like what happens when we're not faithful, and it says he still remains faithful. Or it says, it asks, if we aren't faithful, does he become unfaithful? And it answered no, but obviously, but you know.
And I also think that's interesting as well, because I talked about we can't destroy God's promise, because once it's spoken over us, that's the truth, you know? We can't destroy God's promise. We can choose to not accept God's promise. That doesn't make it any less true over our lives. We can we can choose to not accept it, or we can choose to delay the promise, because as we see, the promise was still there. The promise was still fulfilled in Abram's life, but he delayed it a little bit. He delayed the process a little bit. He was stuck for a little bit. And sometimes I feel like we get stuck in a situation. We get stuck when we say, I'm going to do it my own way. And it's not so much as we are saying, God, I don't want the promise, but sometimes we say, God, I want the promise, but I want to do it my way. And then things are stuck for a little bit. And so that's whenever it's so crucial to come to God's word and say, what have people done before that I can look back on and say, this is what's going on in my life right now. This is what I've done, and let me repent. Let me turn around, and let me say, okay, God, now it's your turn. Like, you just take me wherever you want me to go. Because that's essentially what happened, and that's powerful. So yeah, the idea that God's not ignoring you, he's simply preparing you. And sometimes we, as humans, like to think that God is just ignoring me. God, why are you ignoring me? Why are you not answering my prayers? When in reality, he's like, look, I'm listening to you, I hear you, but I'm preparing you for something greater than you understand right now. God always comes through.
Sometimes it takes a look at yourself. Sometimes it takes a look at yourself to see whether it's you standing in the way, not receiving.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it just isn't time yet, but sometimes it's your own self. I mean.
So, also, let's go, because I really love this part, so let's go to Genesis 13. Verses 1 through 4. Then Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, to the south. Abram was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. And he went on his journey from the south as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been at the beginning, between Bethel and Ai. So, literally, it shows you how powerful going back to where you started is, because whenever you go back to where you started, you see where you've come, right? And so it's easy to say that. Like, it's easy to say, yeah, I would go back. I would look back and see where I've been, but it's not easy whenever you're in the moment where you're saying, God, what's next? What's next? What's next? Why are you not moving me? Why am I not moving any farther right now? And to go and step back and say, God, you've been faithful all of these times, so I'm just going to trust you that you are going to get me through to the next promise, to the next step. There's power in going back to where you started. I can literally say that even in music, even though, we haven't blown up yet, we don't have millions of followers yet or anything, but even looking back to the very first song that we released and seeing that, we have 6,000 streams in the last, I don't even know how long. I looked it up, I think it was a few days ago. But going back to where you started and saying, when we first released our first song, we had like one listener and that was us, you know? Or we were performing them at Revive, but no one really listened to them. You know, Child of the King, it's still not even one of our like top songs. I mean, there's just so much power in going back and saying, God, you have brought me through so much. You've literally changed so much. And I don't know, there's so much power in saying, I'm not going to focus on being stuck. Like, sometimes I feel stuck. Sometimes I feel like I can't write anymore, or like we can't release any more songs, or it gets hard to write. It gets hard to release songs. It gets hard to sit down and do a live stream when so many things are going on in your life. You know, we're college students, and we're trying to do all of that. We're trying to get all of our stuff together to transfer to a 4-year and all of that, plus music, plus ministry. We're starting at Revive Youth Ministry in Bibb County, and all of these things start adding up, and you're like, I don't know what to do. But if we could just stop and go back to the beginning and say, this is what I prayed for. This is the exact moment that I wanted at the beginning. Literally, I remember praying, like, God, I want to be busy. Like, I want to know that this is taking off. I want to see things begin to progress, and I want to go through the journey, because I never wanted any of this to be like a one-hit wonder, like overnight or anything, because there's no learning in that. That would be, number one, too much pressure, because I don't think that I feel like even from the beginning, even though it has not been that long, we have progressed very far from even our first live stream on here, you know? The first Revive, like, that was rough. But we've progressed so far. We've learned things. We've been through journeys. We've understood what's good and what's not, or what we can and can't do in ministry. And so taking that and saying, I'm going to go back to the beginning when we didn't even have, like, one streamer. We only had, like, 2 monthly listeners on Spotify, and, like, all of these things. Apple Music, it was just us streaming our music over and over. We get excited for no reason because it was
5 cents.
Like 5 cents. But going back and understanding what God is doing, the process, the refining process that He's giving us, and just knowing that we've learned so much. I mean, musically we've learned more. Spiritually we've learned more. We've learned that some things that we do are just not acceptable. And some things that we do, no one likes.
A lot of things we do.
But that's okay. That's okay, because in the process there's refining, and there's moments of happiness and sadness. There's moments where we're screaming at each other and we're fighting all day, and then there's moments where we're so happy and we say, look at what God's brought us through. Like, look at how far we've come from the first release that we ever made to this release, or the first Revive that we ever led to this Revive, and it's just incredible. So I encourage you, if you feel stuck, or you feel like, I don't know what to do, or maybe like, I don't know, you're discouraged in some way, and you know that God's promised you something, or you know that you're doing what God's telling you to do, but you feel stuck in a situation, I encourage you to go back to where you started, to look at where He's brought you, and understand that there's so much power in knowing that God has been faithful through every little step of the way. Because I promise you, there have been times in our ministry and in our music that if we had not stepped back and said, this is where God's brought us, we would have just quit. Like, there have been moments when I was this close to just saying, forget it, like, I'm just going to be a college student, I'm just going to live a normal life and do my own thing. But to step back and say, but this is what I prayed for. Like, even how, as weird as it sounds, the stress, that's what we prayed for, because we wanted to be busy. We wanted to have things to do for God. We wanted to do all of these things. And so, yeah, Christian, talk for a minute, because I feel like I'm burning people's ears off.
I mean, said it all, really. I mean, but
did not say it all.
No, that'd be enough. The best thing come when we're all screaming at each other for some reason.
What was it? Was it? Yeah. No. Was it?
Yeah. No.
Only
Maybe.
you. It was only you.
Oh yes. Cried.
Yeah, my dad came in my room, and I was writing only you, and all I had were the verses and the chorus. I had no bridge or anything, and I was like, yeah, it's done. He was like, no, it's not. And I was like, yes, it is. And so he strongly encouraged me to write a bridge, and I bawled. I literally started crying, and then it came. Like, right after I got done crying, the bridge just came. And I was like, okay, God, I wrote it down, and we had it all done. But yeah, I mean, sometimes the best things do come from crying.
It always happens that way. Everybody's screaming at each other, crying.
Very emotional states.
That's when the spirit is leading to something good, and the flesh is
does
trying
not
to resist it.
Which is very true. That proves true in every situation. Every situation. Normally our flesh just doesn't, well, no, always our flesh doesn't want us to do it. But sometimes it's hard. But you know what? There's so much power in going back and seeing what you've been through, how far you've come, what God's brought you through, all the promises that He's fulfilled in your life, and understanding, yes, I'm on the right path, and this is what God wants me to do.
Shirley Ann, did you see Shirley Ann's message?
No. Or did I?
Just as I keep a journal, so in the hard times I can look back at God's goodness.
Yes, that's beautiful. I actually write them on my, no, I don't write them on my wall, but I write letters and I fold them up and put them on my wall as a prayer wall.
She said we weren't created to be normal.
Thank God.
Yeah, honestly, I'm glad because we're not normal, so.
Then we would, I don't know.
Not even close.
Trying to see if there's anything else that I want to.
Go ahead and grab it.
Oh yeah. Sometimes we need to take the same tour, walk down the same road, and stop at the same resting place to see just how far God's promises are, just how far and wide His abundance flows. And so, God's promises are an abundant flow over our lives. So if we submit to what He wants to do, His promises will be an abundant flow throughout our entire lives. It will never stop. And even if we don't feel it, that does not mean that it's not an abundant flow. That just means that something really great is coming if we're in His will in our lives, which is powerful. It's beautiful.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. But yeah, I think, Christian, what was your favorite part of tonight's discussion? And on the live, if you had a favorite part of this discussion, definitely let us know. Dad, did you have a favorite part?
Yeah, the fact that I like Shirley Ann's comments, and the fact that I feel better now that I'm not normal and it's okay.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's me.
That was his favorite part. Christian, did you have a favorite part?
The whole thing.
I still love the idea of going back to where you started. I don't know, but that just hit me so hard because sometimes maybe you don't even realize that you're doing it, even though you're doing it. And so to understand that, I don't know, there's just so much power in that. Again, I encourage you, step back, see what God has done for you, and understand that His promises are an abundant flow over your life, an abundant flow over your life.
What?
If you know this song, again, sing along, and if you don't, that's okay, just close your eyes and act like you do. Praise goes to the only one who could save my Also, oh yeah, can you hand that here? I was gonna say something about it, but I was like, we don't have
our
them.
album. We finally have CDs.
We have CDs for our album. They are $10. You can message us on any of our platforms. You can message us on our website, or you can get in contact with us anyway that you can find us. But we have CDs for sale, and they're super cool, and I am obsessed with the cover of them, not gonna lie, even though, you know, I put it together. I didn't make it. Rachel Smith made the cover, which is incredible. But yeah, if you want a CD, please let us know. They're $10 again. And yeah, we were super excited. We have the correct CDs this time. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, our website is the3fold.online. You can find everything there other than the CDs. We don't have those listed yet. I will work on that. But in the meantime, just let us know if you'd like one, and we will get these to you. But yeah, we love you so much, and I'm going to pray, right click, and then we will say bye-bye. But God, we just want to thank you for everything that you're doing, God. And I just, again, just like I stated before, God, I thank you for being faithful even when we're not faithful, God. And I just pray that this week, as we continue on, that you would help us to remember that there is a process to receiving a promise, God. And I just pray that we would remain faithful to who you are, and that we would remain faithful to that process, God. I pray that we, whenever we get discouraged, that we would take a step back, we would go back to where we started and say, this is what you brought me through, and this is why you were so faithful to me. And I'm going to continue on knowing that you are a good God no matter how I feel. And God, we just thank you for all that you are and all that we know that you're doing. God, we love you, and we give you all the praise and the glory. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay, thank you guys so much for tuning in. We love you so much, and bye. Happy Tuesday. Merry Tuesday.
Peace out, everybody.
Bye.